DFS community, welcome into week 9 of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches and determine the game script and player outcomes this week. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, today we're going to try to do a show without getting interrupted. We got a foster dog here. Piggy, come here. If you are interested in adopting such a beautiful beast like this, oh, Piggy, wave. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want to adopt this beautiful beast, go over on Twitter at Todzilla1337 and send me a DM. My DMs are always open. And if you're interested in adopting, she's a very wonderful puppy, but she also wants to play very much with our other dog. So we'll see if we get any whining with her being in here with me and away from the other dog. All right, and as always, folks, today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Are you looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate advice in the DFS industry and make it rain. All right, today is Rainbow Sherbet. Let's open this up and get the show underway. Oh, that is good stuff. All right. Normally we just hop into the main slate here, but we have a game in Germany, so that's going to be an island game. We're going to go over that first and then hit up the main slate, then hit up the Sunday night and Monday night game. So getting into the Germany game here, we have Kansas City and Miami in Germany. Kansas City technically a home game here. It's a 50-point Vegas total, which is really good. And it's a 2-point Vegas line, which they're expecting it to be close, which is also good. That means Kansas City's at 26 team implied total. Miami at a 24 team implied total. Kicking it off with the quote-unquote away team in this. Miami at number 2 in offensive pass protection. Kansas City at number 2 in defensive pass rush. Miami might not have as much time as they're used to in throwing the ball, but again, this is an adjusted sack rate. I think Miami gets the ball out quick, which is probably why the adjusted sack rate is a little bit lower or a little bit better for them in general. But the overall pass DVOA, they're number 3. That's kind of how efficient or how effective their entire pass game is as a whole. That's very good, number 3. But Kansas City, they're number 4. So Kansas City's defense certainly looks like it matches up really well with Miami's offense there in the pass game. So could be a little bit of stalemate there. Usually in these situations, people who are just good at football are the ones who do the best, or the person on the team in this situation, the offense, who's usually dominating the ball or getting the ball a lot more often. They're going to continue that aspect. And really Miami, if that's going to be the case here, it's going to be Tyreek Hill in the pass game. The one thing we do need to look into is the other aspect of their offense, which is the run game. So Miami number 2 and number 3 in those pass protection or pass categories. Miami's actually number 1 in offensive run blocking and number 1 in offensive run DVOA. And Kansas City number 29 in stopping the run and number 23 in the run DVOA. This is telling me Miami's going to be able to run all over Kansas City's defense. And really, if they're going to be moving the ball, they're going to be most effective running the ball. The pass game should be fine, but that's not the one that I'm going to attack in the DFS. It's going to be Raheem Mostert there for Miami. I think he's going to be plenty good. And we've seen him be involved in the pass game too when he's been the main back there. So I don't see that really stopping either. So interesting there. Miami's pass game should be just fine. Pace of play, nothing to write home about, but the run game is really what I'd be attacking from Miami. I think that's where they're going to be the most successful. Getting into Kansas City, number 1 in offensive pass protection, number 4 in pass DVOA, which is pretty good. Miami, number 5 in the defensive pass rush, and number 17 in pass DVOA. So adjusted sack rate, Kansas City number 1, Miami number 5 on defense. That's pretty close to a stalemate. Nothing really to write home about there in terms of getting sacked from Kansas City. It shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. They just might have a little less time to throw than they're used to, with Miami being so good there. Getting into the pass aspect overall, though, we have Kansas City number 4 in pass DVOA, Miami 17. This is telling me Kansas City should be pretty effective moving the ball in the air. In situations where they're normally passing the ball, they should be a little bit above average in those, because they're number 4 overall, which means they've been pretty good compared to what typically happens, and Miami's been kind of middle of the pack this year. So I'd expect Kansas City's pass game to be just fine and maybe be under a little bit of extra pressure compared to what they're used to, which is probably going to lead to a few more dump-offs to the running backs and then a few more targets over to Travis Kelce, as he's kind of more the underneath route runner there. And maybe, I don't know, who else runs some short routes there in the pass game. But really, I think it's like the Justin Watson show in terms of some of those longer routes, and MVS in terms of those longer routes. I think those aren't going to be there in this particular game. So those two I'd be avoiding in this particular island game. But they're probably going to be cheap. Just realize it might not be super good for them this week. Getting into the run block, in Kansas City, number 23, Miami 18 at stopping the run. Hopefully, I got the dog whining. It wants to get out of here, go play with the other dog. But that's kind of a pretty even matchup, a little bit in the favor of Miami. Defensive run DVOA for Miami is number 28, Kansas City 21 in offensive run DVOA. This is telling me Kansas City is going to move the ball via the air. They might not have as much time as they're used to, but they should be pretty effective throwing the ball. Running the ball is going to be a little bit different. It's not like a super great matchup. Maybe they're getting a few 0 to 3 yard gains here every once in a while. Maybe an explosive run here or there, but that shouldn't be anything that you want to write home about. But yeah, for me, I think island game matchup, you're going to be looking at Kansas City's pass game. Travis Kelce, obviously pretty good. Patrick Mahomes, if he's going to be slinging it. And then Miami's run game there should be very good as well. And then the pass game, just kind of a studs eat scenario. All right, and that's going to do it for the Miami-Kansas City game in Germany. The 2-point Vegas line, I don't see anything astronomical based off of here that tells me we should see anything any different in that end. Miami could certainly pull this out with their offense kind of being neutral in the pass game and really good in the run game. Do you want to do an upset alert for that? Probably not. I think it will be close, and I think it will be back and forth affair in terms of the offenses being pretty good at moving the ball. All right, let's get into the main slate. We'll head down to the number 1 game on the slate, which is Dallas and Philadelphia. So this game, or this slate, is actually really, really ugly. We have a lot of low totals, which has been really the case throughout a lot of this season. But Dallas-Philly at 47 is number 1. Then we'd bump all the way down to, I think, 44 Vegas game totals for a couple teams that are tied at number 2. And then the following, a couple teams tied at number 4. That's already down at like 40 or 41 points, as the third best kind of totals in terms of these games. So it's a really ugly slate. There's probably only a few games where you're going to want players from this particular week. We'll see if we can tease out any additional matchups in some of these lower scoring totals for your one-off plays in DFS. All right, getting into the Dallas-Philadelphia game. We have Dallas going into Philadelphia. Philadelphia 3-point home favorite, so just the standard 3-point bump there for the home team. It's a 47 Vegas game total. That's the best on the slate this week. And then Philadelphia we have as 25 team implied total, Dallas 22 team implied total. That 25 for Philadelphia is the best team implied total on the slate. Dallas at 22 is the 6th best team implied total on the slate. All right, getting into the Dallas side, they are number 20 in offensive pass protection. Philadelphia, number 18. Nothing to write home about there. Adjusted sack rates shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary in this particular game for that. Offensive pass DVOA, number 13 for Dallas, so top half there. Philadelphia in the red at number 23. A little bit of a favor for Dallas's offense here. I would say they should be fine passing the ball. 20th in offensive pass protection isn't great, but they might find themselves with a decent amount of time to throw, with Philadelphia being pretty similarly ranked there. So I would say Dallas pass game is going to be fine. What's that run blocking look like? Number 14 for Dallas, number 9 in stopping the run for Philadelphia, so a slight favor there for Philadelphia. Offensive run DVOA, though, for Dallas, 23. Philadelphia has got the number 1 run DVOA. I really expect Dallas to be struggling on the run game here. I believe I heard Philadelphia hasn't allowed a running back 1 yet to crest 60 yards in a game, and we're heading into week 9 here, so that probably continues here. We've seen Pollard kind of struggle with his efficiency this year. I would say his rush yards, you're probably going to want to bet the under. I'm not sure where those are at, but if it's anything north of 60 rush yards this week, I would bet the under on that. I would be comfortable as low as maybe 55, 54 yards betting the under for him. I don't think he reaches that in this game. And I think Dallas is going to have to throw the ball in order to be effective this week. So that's really, I think, how Dallas is going to go. It's probably going to be a super popular a game to attack in DFS this week, just with the slate looking the way it is, and this game really being one of the only ones that looks like it could shoot out pretty highly. All right, let's get into that Philadelphia side here. Philadelphia offensive pass protection, number 16, Dallas 17 in the pass rush. Again, pretty standard, pretty mid here in terms of the adjusted sack rate. Getting into the pass DVOA, Philadelphia number 9, Dallas number 3. Again, this is a pretty even matchup. This is telling me Philadelphia, they're used to moving the ball pretty effectively via the air. They might struggle in that department this week, but this pass DVOA really could be affected by the fact that Dallas has had some really weird games where they just gotten out to these massive leads, scored touchdowns on pass plays and stuff on defense for the opposing team. So that's potentially why this is so high. It might not be as great of a matchup for Dallas's defense as you would perhaps expect, or maybe this number 3 pass DVO rating is a little bit inflated with those particular weird games that they were having. Either way, it looks like Philadelphia is really going to have to put some effort into the pass game here. More of a studs eat scenario. So in this particular situation, I'd be more interested in A.J. Brown than Devonta Smith in this particular matchup. But really, if you're going to go into a tournament, I'd be doing A.J. Brown in the cash. If you're going to do a tournament, those guys are probably going to be super popular. Dallas pass game, Philly pass game, A.J. Brown, probably going to be super popular as well. Devonta Smith is probably a leverage play off of that, where you can put him in and hope that he does pretty well there. But really, it's an even matchup, slightly in the favor of Dallas in terms of stopping that pass game in this particular week. Getting into the run blocking, we have Philadelphia number 12, Dallas number 7 at stopping the run. Again, Dallas slightly in the favor here for them over Philadelphia. Run DVOA, Philadelphia number 5, Dallas number 9. Again, that's pretty even. In these types of scenarios, it's kind of like the studs eat, or the people who are good at football will perform well in these situations, and that's kind of what it's looking for, like for Philadelphia on both ends. Nothing really to write home about. I think it continues. Their offense continues as is, which probably means, A.J. Brown going to have his. Does that run game get a little bit more involved? It doesn't look like they're going to be super successful. If Dallas is going to be passing the ball pretty successfully, but not running it very well, they could be, pushing the pace, or not pushing the pace, but, getting chunk yards via the pass game if that's what they're going to be attacking a little bit more often. They could be putting up some points anyway. It's kind of an interesting game, I guess, with Dallas being this way in the pass game, and then, being really kind of getting stuffed in this run game. I could see Dallas's kicker having a really good game in this, where, Philadelphia's also kind of in the same boat, where they really have to work to sustain those drives. It's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be a really hard-fought battle. And really, I could see both of these teams with their kicker getting highly involved. I wouldn't be shocked to see both of these kickers kick 2 or 3 in this particular matchup. So if you're placing those prop bets, Dallas kicker, certainly over 1.5 field goals, I would feel comfortable with. Philadelphia, I think they're just going to be, one of those teams that's got to grind it out this week. Just kind of looking at the pace, Dallas doesn't play super fast or 27 overall, but again, they had some weird games. So that neutral situation, pace of play, they're number 10, which is fairly decent. Philadelphia, they're 25 pace of play overall, but again, they've been leading a lot of games. When they're leading, they're probably playing a little bit slower. And even when they're leading, they are slow compared to other teams that are leading. So take that into consideration. But they are middle of the pack there in offensive neutral situation pace of play. So maybe this pace is a little bit quicker than maybe some people would expect it to be. But 47 Vegas game total, I expect that to be pretty close. I know a lot of people are calling for a shootout here. This really isn't calling for a shootout unless Dallas ends up being really successful in that pass game and Philadelphia isn't necessarily grinding out those drives to score points. I really could see this end up being, a couple touchdowns and 3 to 4 field goals for each team where their offenses aren't doing poorly. They just aren't scoring a lot of touchdowns in this particular matchup. And that's kind of how I see this game turning out. All right, let's get on to the number 2 games on the slate. We have 2 of them. Indianapolis at Carolina. Again, this is already down at 44. That's the first one we'll go over. The other one is Seattle going into Baltimore. So we have Indianapolis going into Carolina. Revenge game here for the coach in Carolina. 2.5-point road favorites for Indianapolis in this matchup. Again, 44 Vegas game total, tied for second best on the slate. We have Indianapolis at 23.25 team implied total. That's good for 5th best this week. Carolina at 20.75. That's 9th best on the slate. So there we go. We got, I believe, 10 games. So we should have 20 total. Carolina is actually in the top half here with a 20.75 team implied total, which is usually one of the worst on the slates typically. All right, getting into the away team. Indianapolis, number 19 in offensive pass protection. Carolina, 9 in the pass rush. Again, this is adjusted sack rate. I'd expect Carolina maybe to get a few sacks in this particular matchup. With the looking this way, the pass DVOA is pretty neutral here. Number 16 for Indianapolis offense, 14 for Carolina's defense. These situations, it's more of a studs eat. I think Pittman's a stud in terms of wide receivers. I know we've been seeing a lot of volume head to the rookie over there, Josh Downs. I'm not necessarily certain he's a stud, but he has been getting volume. And again, in these neutral situations, it usually seems like the people that are getting the ball or the people that are very good at football are the ones who continue that and do well in those situations. So really the pass game, not going to be any different than what you'd normally expect. They might be under pressure a little bit, trying to get those passes off a little bit quicker. You could see a few dump offs to Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor in this as well. But nothing really to write home about there. Indianapolis, run blocking number 24, so that's in the red, pretty poor. Fortunately for them, Carolina's defense is number 32 in stopping the run. They're also number 32 in defensive run DVOA, where Indianapolis is number 4 in the run DVOA. Again, this is number 2 game total on the slate. And with this looking this way, with, hey, Indianapolis run blocking 24, there might not be a ton of people on the Indianapolis run game. I know it's been kind of weird this season with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, but I think those two are going to have a pretty solid week this week. So getting them into your lineup, again, could Jonathan Taylor be the one that goes off for 120 and 2 touchdowns because he breaks a long one? Yes. Zach Moss is going to have to do it more on a volume basis, where he has been actually quite effective when he's been in there, but he's not one of those that can break off those 80-yard touchdowns unless it's really well blocked. So keep that in mind. I think the run game here from Indianapolis is going to be very interesting. If that pass game is being, fine, they should have a lot of scoring opportunities here for Indianapolis, and they are a team that plays very, very fast. So those running backs are very interesting to me in Indianapolis this week. Getting into the Carolina side, they're 25th in offensive pass protection. That's red. Fortunately for them, defensive pass rush for Indianapolis, 23rd. So Carolina might find themselves with a little extra time compared to what they're used to. Pass DVOAs, Carolina 28th, which is also in the red, poor. Indianapolis 21. It's a little bit in the favor of Indianapolis's defense there, but nothing really to write home about. I think Carolina is actually going to move the ball in the air a little bit better than they're used to. This could mean like dart throws for Jonathan Mingo in this particular game, a dart throw for DJ Chark. Could we see them be a little bit more successful in this matchup? I think so, especially when we look at the run game. Carolina 26th and 29th. Indianapolis number 11 in stopping the run and 21st in run DVOA. I think Carolina, they're looking like they're getting hit behind the line of scrimmage or not gaining, more than about 2 yards on a carry quite often, where Indianapolis is pretty good at stopping people initially and not giving up some of those explosive run plays. But the DVOA, Carolina 29, Indianapolis 21. This might also lead Carolina to say, hey, like, I know we're 29th in run DVOA, but this team that we're playing, they're 21st. It's going to be a little bit better than we typically see. So Carolina, I think, can move the ball a little bit better than you'd perhaps expect in these matchups. We have Indianapolis playing fast, pass game good, run game should also be effective for Indianapolis, which I think, I could see this one end up shooting out a little bit more. I know we've been saying this with Indianapolis last week as well with New Orleans game, and that game did hit over 60 points total. I think it was like 37-28 or something like that. And I called that last week. I think we could see something similar here where Indianapolis is, pretty successful on offense, driving the ball. Carolina is finding it a little bit easier than they're used to run the ball. Carolina maybe hits this 24, 27 point total, 23, versus like the 21 or so that Vegas is expecting. And then Indianapolis, especially with that run game being such a huge favor in the DVOA, I think Indianapolis's run game is going to be pretty good. And that's going to really open up that offense in general. And I think we could see Indy score close to 30 points in this. And I'm going to say, if I was placing a bet, it would be on the over on this particular matchup. Anyway, hopefully learned a little bit about that matchup. Let's get on to Seattle and Baltimore. That is the other number 2 game on the slate. All right, Seattle heading into Baltimore. Baltimore 6-point home favorites. 44 Vegas game total, tied for second best on the slate. Baltimore with that 6-point home favorite, our 25 team implied total. Again, tied for number 1 on the slate. I think we saw that with Philly as well. Seattle, 19 team implied total, 14th best on the slate, so one of the worst ones. A lot of green in this particular matchup for Seattle, so 8th in offensive pass protection, 7th in offensive pass DVOA. Unfortunately for them, Baltimore number 1 in defensive pass rush, number 1 in defensive pass DVOA. I think Seattle's going to struggle to move the ball compared to what they're used to in the pass game. This is probably going to say, hey, they're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker, or get the ball out to the ones that are, open or trying to get open. I think that's going to lead to a little bit more targets for Tyler Lockett and a little bit more for Jackson Smith and Jigba in a matchup like this, where they're going to be pretty heavily covered. I think it's going to be a little bit more underneath stuff. I think this is actually one where Metcalf, even though we've seen him get a ton of targets recently, I want to say it's over 20, 22, something like that in the last 2 weeks. I think he might be the fade in this particular matchup, where it's not looking good in the pass game. I know he's getting a lot of volume. I just think they're going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker to people getting open underneath. And I think that's more Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba in this particular matchup, maybe dumping it off to the running backs if no one's open, and those tight ends as well. So interesting one there. Again, a lot of green in this matchup. So offensive run blocking for Seattle, number 7. Baltimore, number 10. Pretty even there. Seattle, number 16 in run DVOA. Baltimore, number 5. So I wouldn't expect Seattle's run game to be super successful either. It looks like the pass game is going to be a little bit more effective, actually, than their run game overall. So, kind of a a miss here for Seattle's offense. In terms of DFS, I'm probably not going to get a ton of Seattle players here. It's not looking like a great matchup for them. Certainly going to avoid the run game. Walker, Charbonnet already looks like it's going to get a little bit dicey in terms of trying to predict who's going to be getting the volume there. But pass game wise, it's not looking good for them. So probably going to be a lot of those players off my board this week. Really looking at just cheap options, which would probably be Jackson Smith and Jigba, or really, really, really deep dart throws of the tight ends there in Seattle. All right, getting into the Baltimore side, they are 6-point home favorites here. Baltimore 21st in offensive pass protection. Seattle number 14 in that pass rush, so a little bit in the favor of Seattle there in terms of the adjusted sack rate. Maybe see a few of those in this particular matchup, but it's not a huge benefit. Baltimore number 11 in pass DVOA, Seattle 19th in defensive pass DVOA. That's 8 points in the favor of Baltimore's offense. So it might take a few sacks, but it looks like the offense will be okay moving the ball via the air. Looking at the run game, though, Seattle number 4 in stopping the run, Baltimore 10th in offensive run blocking. Kind of suggestive that Seattle's getting people behind the line of scrimmage or stuffing them short. Baltimore actually top 10 there, doing a really good job of just gaining yards at the beginning. Again, this is an even matchup. Those who are really good at football can kind of overcome those situations where they're just going to beat the defender across from them. I don't think Baltimore's necessarily got that. I think it's just going to be a really, as Baltimore is running, it's going to be a grinded out for the running backs where, it's a lot of 2 to 5 yard gains, and that's about it. The run DVOA, Seattle number 8, Baltimore number 2. Again, Baltimore might find it a little bit more difficult to run the ball than they're used to. And really, this whole game is shipping up. I know it's tied for second best on the slate. Baltimore tied for first best team implied total. If Baltimore is going to be one of the top scoring teams on this slate, it's going to all be running through Lamar Jackson, I believe, in this particular matchup. I don't think there's going to be a ton of points scored on Seattle's end. I don't think there's going to be a ton of points necessarily scored on Baltimore's end, even though the DVOA aspects suggest that they're probably going to be okay moving the ball. I would, kind of lean the Lamar Jackson, Andrews route in this particular matchup. I don't think this is one necessarily for Zay Flowers or OBJ or Bateman. I think it's just going to be more of a grinded out. Seattle going to be struggling. Baltimore not going to be super great, but a lot of it's going to rest on Lamar Jackson's shoulders to do it with his legs and kind of get those passes out to Andrews to keep the ball moving down the field. So kind of an interesting one here. I would bet the under on this. It's not looking great for either offense here, but certainly both of them capable of doing a little bit better than this suggests it could be. I just don't think it's going to go that route compared to the Indy-Carolina game. I'd be a little bit more interested in attacking. All right, getting into these fourth best game totals on the slate. We have Washington and New England already down at 41. Again, we've only gone through 3 games and we're already at almost 40 here, which is really bad. The other one's Chicago and New Orleans, but we'll get into this game first. We have New England. Home game here, 2.5-point home favorites, 41 Vegas game total, 4th best on the slate, tied for 4th best. That gives us New England at 21.75 team implied total, 7th best on the slate. Washington 19.25 team implied total, 13th best on the slate. Getting into the Washington side, number 31 in offensive pass protection, 26th in pass DVOA. New England 26th in the defensive pass rush, 18th in pass DVOA. So really pretty close matchups here. Washington taking a lot of sacks. New England not necessarily generating a lot of sacks. Pretty even matchup here. Washington just might find it a little bit easier to throw the ball in this or have a little bit more time than perhaps they're used to, with New England not necessarily generating a ton of sacks on defense there. The pass DVOA is slightly in the favor of New England again, number 18 pass DVOA versus Washington 26. Kind of suggestive that Washington's not going to be super great at passing the ball, but we've kind of seen they can get it done with volume in terms of the pass DVOA. They just aren't very good. They got to get there with volume. It's just not going to be an efficient process. So it looks like it's going to continue that way. They might find it a little bit easier to move the ball in the air than they're used to, just with how bad New England's defense is looking here. It's not good, but it's not terrible for New England's defense. So Washington might find the air attack a little bit easier this week than they're perhaps used to. Getting into Washington's run game, 16th in run blocking, New England 13th in stopping the run. Pretty even matchup there. Washington number 12 in run DVOA, New England 7 in run DVOA. I think Washington's run game actually looks like the better of the two matchups, but New England certainly a lot better on defense at stopping the run than they are at the pass game. So it looks like a net overall negative for Washington, not necessarily moving the ball very effectively, stalling out drives. I wouldn't expect them to perform very well. Again, if we're looking at a DFS stuff, I'm probably fading most of Washington unless it's a tight end or something getting into your lineup as just a one-off cheap option if he is cheap this week. All right, getting into the New England side, can we squeeze out any juice here? Number 6 in offensive pass protection for New England, Washington 13th in that pass rush. That was with the help of Chase Young, who got traded, so that could certainly affect things this week in terms of generating pressure from Washington, which means New England could have even more time to pass than they're used to, or even more time to pass than they would have with Chase Young there. So keep that in mind. Washington is 30th in pass DVOA. I know New England's been pretty bad, so that's why they're 24th in pass DVOA. They just get the ball out quick. You can see the pace of play here for New England's very high. It's because they're getting that ball out quick and kind of calling those plays. I think in this particular scenario, New England's going to find the pass game a lot easier than they're used to. They're probably going to have some decent amount of time there to throw the ball. I would say this would be a Kendrick Bourne game normally, but now he's out with that knee injury, so who the heck's going to be catching those balls? I don't know. I think it's just going to get spread around. Juju, Demario Douglas, tight ends, running backs, you name it. I think it's just going to get spread around. I don't think Mac Jones is necessarily going to lock on to any one of those targets there in New England, but he himself might have a pretty solid week. So if you're kind of debating in a super flex spot between Mac Jones and somebody else that's crummy, like Jaron Hall or somebody from Minnesota, I don't know what that game looks like yet, but this is certainly looking like a plus matchup for Mac Jones. Getting into the run blocking side, New England 20th, Washington number 21 at stopping the run. Again, they don't have Chase Young anymore. Not that he was a terrific run stopper or anything, but they did lose that guy and now have a backup. Or his backup in there. So New England's run DVOA is number 19, Washington number 6. This is telling me that New England's not going to be able to run the ball very well. It's going to have to kind of go through the air. So Mac Jones, I don't know. It's going to be him. I think he's going to be spreading the ball around, so I don't know if you can necessarily get anybody else with him. But if he's cheap, do you want to run him naked? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe putting in the tight end spot, hoping that Mike Gesicki gets into the end zone or it's a Hunter Henry week. Whatever the case may be, I do think Mac Jones will probably be one of the best fantasy options from this particular game. But yeah, it's looking ugly. I don't necessarily like this. Again, it's already a low Vegas game total. I'm probably not going to be getting a ton of pieces from these guys in my DFS spots. Just the way it's shaping up in this matchup. Let's see if the other number 4 game on the slate is any better. We have Chicago heading into New Orleans. We have a dome game here. New Orleans is 8.5-point home favorites. Again, 41 Vegas game total is pretty low, but at 8.5-point favorites, that gives New Orleans a 24.75 team implied total, which is 3rd best on the slate. Chicago at 16.25, they're 19th best on the slate. That's 2nd from the worst. I mean, there's 20 teams, so maybe they could be tied with somebody at 19, but they are one of the worst on the slate in terms of projected point totals this week. Getting into Chicago's pass protection, number 29, New Orleans 27 in the pass rush. On the surface, this looks pretty good. Like, hey, Chicago might not be taking a lot of sacks. Unfortunately for Chicago, that pass DVOA is at number 29, and New Orleans pass DVOA is at number 8. I think this is indicative that Chicago is really going to struggle moving the ball, but they might find themselves with a little bit extra time to throw it. But yeah, I think they're not going to be moving it very effectively. It's probably going to be more of a Cole Kmet type week with some of the numbers like this. Kind of a weird one, but it's not looking fantastic for Chicago's offense to be moving the ball via the air. Getting into the run blocking side, that is better for Chicago. They're number 4 in the run blocking. New Orleans number 14 in stopping the run. Chicago's run DVOA at number 9. New Orleans run DVOA on defense, 19. If Chicago's going to be moving the ball, it's going to be on the ground. This is going to be good for their ground game. Again, if they're not being super effective in the pass game or not very efficient, we could see some dump offs to those running backs as well. Obviously, we have Foreman and we have Roschon Johnson in there. It was kind of a 3-headed committee with Roschon Johnson coming back last week from injury. I think that probably changes a little bit this week, where you're going to see a lot more Deonta Foreman running the ball, and you'll have him mixing in as we see maybe Darrington Evans kind of lose out on his role that he had last week. I think he might come in and just relieve 2 to 4 opportunities, not taking a ton of snaps, where you see Roschon Johnson getting some more of these pass down work, 8 to 10 touches for him, and then Deonta Foreman kind of dominating more of the backfield, the 10 to 15, 12 to 15 touches for him. And he's probably going to be the one that's going to be a little bit more successful out of all of them, with that run game being a little bit better there. However, he doesn't really catch passes all that well, so I think getting into the pass protection side, you could see Roschon Johnson get a few opportunities in the pass game. Either way, it looks like Chicago run game is going to be the most effective. If you think they're going to be successful there, it kind of looks like that is. Deonta Foreman is one person that you can look into, but really not a team that I'm looking to attack in DFS from the looks of it. Getting into the New Orleans side, they are number 18 in offensive pass protection. Chicago 32 in the defensive pass rush. They should have plenty of time to throw. They shouldn't be taking sacks, which is very good for New Orleans. The offensive pass DVOA for New Orleans, number 19. Chicago 31st in pass DVOA. This tells me they're going to have time to throw. They're going to be pretty effective moving the ball via the air. Finally, I think we see the Chris Olave breakout game. I know it's been kind of called across the industry that this is the week that he finally breaks out. Wouldn't be shocked to see him, kind of be that slate breaker. Let's see, do we have a button for slate breaker? I know I have a voiceover for that, but I don't know, MLG air horn. I just think Chris Olave will be pretty good in this particular matchup. Certainly in play for DFS aspects, and if they're going to be moving the ball very well in the air, Derek Carr certainly in play as well. Offensive run blocking, New Orleans number 11, pretty solid. 13th in the offensive run DVOA, pretty solid. Unfortunately for them, Chicago's actually number 2 in defensive run stopping, so they're getting a lot of negative plays there, really stopping people at the line of scrimmage. And they're number 10 in offensive run DVOA, so not a lot of people being super successful running on them. Even though Chicago's a bad team and you'd expect teams to be running on them, they've been doing pretty good at stopping that this season. So I wouldn't expect New Orleans necessarily to be super great in this run game. I think they're going to be very effective passing the ball. And if they're finding that run game to be a little bit of a struggle, I think New Orleans really is going to dominate in the pass game. Derek Carr certainly in play for DFS. I think based off of what we've seen so far, he's one of the better plays. Just because his offense is probably going to have to focus a little bit more on that aspect. Wouldn't be shocked to see him over 300 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns in this matchup. All right. With that being said, Juwan Johnson, the tight end, I think he's finally going to be in there getting some pass play or getting some work. We've seen Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau be pretty effective there. I think maybe Juwan Johnson's one of those sneaky dart throws that we see score a touchdown this week for New Orleans there in the tight end spot. All right, let's get into the number 6 game on the slate. Tampa Bay heading into Houston. This particular matchup, we do have Houston as 2.5-point home favorites. We're down at a 40 Vegas game total now. That gives Houston a 21.25 team implied total, which is 8th best on the slate. Tampa Bay at 18.75, 15th best team total. Getting into the pass protection, Tampa Bay number 4, Houston 24th in the pass rush. Pretty heavily in the favor of Tampa Bay. Wouldn't expect them to take a lot of sacks in this particular matchup. Pass DVOA for Tampa Bay 17, Houston 24. Again, that's slightly in the favor of Tampa Bay. This does look like a win where they're going to have good clean pocket for Baker. Pass game should be effective somewhat in this particular matchup. I think this is a good spot for Mike Evans from the looks of it. Can we glean some of these diamonds in the rough from these lower games in the slate? I think this is shaping up to be a good one for Mr. Evans. We've seen him kind of not necessarily dud out, but he hasn't had one of those monster games for a while. And I think maybe he comes back and gets one of those this week in Houston. Unfortunately for Tampa Bay's run game, it looks really poor. Number 32 in run blocking, dead last. Houston number 6 in stopping the run. I expect a lot of behind the line of scrimmage stuff when they do run the ball. Fortunately for Tampa Bay, it does look like they've kind of abandoned the run. They've barely got 10 or 12 rush attempts on the designed rush attempts per game since they've come out of the bye, and rightfully so. They've been really bad in the run game. So 31st in run DVOA, Houston middle of the pack at 16. Don't expect Rachaad White to be very good in terms of those running opportunities. Should be very ineffective. Tampa Bay going to move the ball via the air. Unfortunately for Tampa Bay, it looks like they're really good for this week in terms of moving the ball via the air. So that's probably how they're going to do it. Evans, Godwin, certainly in play there. We've seen Rachaad White be very involved in the pass game, but that's usually when they're under pressure a little bit more, and they might not be this week. Getting into the Houston side, they're number 14 in offensive pass protection, 20th in pass rush for Tampa Bay's defense. Slightly in the favor of Houston, nothing to write home about, just an average week there in terms of expected sacks. Pass DVOA for Houston's actually number 5, Tampa Bay 15th, middle of the road there. That's the favor of Houston. They should be pretty effective moving the ball. We've seen Nico Collins kind of come out and have a pretty good week, so I'd expect that to continue for him. Tank Dell, he's certainly in play. We've seen him have an explosive week, but that came at the cost of other injuries like Noah Brown, who is actually still back, and Noah Brown led the team last week in pass yardage against Carolina. So really, I think the one player from Houston I'd want in that pass game is Nico Collins. I'm not sure if he's going to be very expensive or not, but he'd be the player I'm attacking. Again, we're getting into some pretty low Vegas game totals here, so keep that into mind when you're setting your lineups. Run blocking, Houston number 19, Tampa Bay number 22. Run DVOA for Tampa Bay 13th, Houston 30th in run DVOA. So Houston not super effective running the ball. Tampa Bay not necessarily like stopping people at the line of scrimmage very well, but Houston also not super great at getting a ton of yards either. We do have what sounds like Pierce is going to be on the out list, I guess, if you want to call it that. He won't be playing this week. It's going to leave Singletary and Mike Boone to the running back situation. They're probably going to be popular because of that. That, to me, in a tournament is a for sure avoid. Fade those guys. They're not going to be winning you any tournaments this week based off of this matchup. I think Houston's going to be passing the ball to move it. And certainly Nico Collins could be a pivot point if a lot of people are rushing to the running back room to get those options there. That's going to leave the wide receivers a little bit more room, as those people picking up those running backs are less likely to get a Houston wide receiver on their team. All right, and Houston actually plays pretty quick here, so pass game even a little bit more effective for them this week. But really, both sides just one piece on the pass game. Nico Collins, maybe a Godwin, maybe an Evans, and that's really the only three pieces in terms of DFS that I would be interested in this week. All right, we got a couple teams tied for 7th best on the slate. They're actually right next to each other. Arizona going into Cleveland. We'll look at first, and then we'll get into LA Green Bay after that. So we're already dipping down into the 38.5 Vegas game total territory, very low here. And again, tied for 7th here, and then we'll get into 2 games tied for 9th best, and we'll be done with the main slate, which is super gross. Keep in mind, these are super gross games. 38.5 Vegas game total, 7th best. Cleveland actually now up to 10-point home favorites. Now that Watson's going to be playing, that line jumped pretty significantly. Even though this is a super low total, 7th best on the slate, Cleveland's 24.25 team implied total is the 4th best on the slate. Arizona 14.25 team implied total, 20th, so they are dead last. Again, we got a new quarterback here. We'll get into Arizona's offense. They're number 10 in offensive pass protection. Cleveland number 3 in the defensive pass rush. This is an adjusted sack rate, so Arizona's actually been pretty good about not taking sacks. That's been under Josh Dobbs this season. We do have the rookie in there from the sounds of it. Clayton Tune's going to be playing this week. He certainly could be turnover prone, taking sacks, especially Cleveland, we know, generates a lot of pressure. They're 3rd in pass rush. They're number 2 in pass DVOA. Arizona 22nd in pass DVOA. So really, I think this pass game is going to be in a void, especially if Clayton Tune. This is a bad matchup to come into as a rookie. If he performs well, that's, all the more power to that guy in probably one of the worst situations that you can come into as a rookie quarterback going against this Cleveland defense. Cleveland defense certainly in play. They're probably going to be a popular play within tournaments just because of playing a rookie, but there's a lot of really fresh meat if you want playing quarterback this week. So a lot of these teams are going to be actually probably pretty popular in defense. Cleveland might not have as much roster ship percentage as I was expecting, but certainly a good play. They're probably going to be the most expensive defense on the slate. Arizona, number 17 in offensive run blocking. Cleveland, number 1 in defensive run stopping. Bad matchup for Arizona there. Arizona's run DVOA has been really good at number 7, Cleveland number 3. So even though Arizona's been really effective moving the ball, they might find it more of a struggle in this particular matchup than they're used to with Cleveland. I can see why Arizona's team implied total is really low. I don't expect them to be scoring a ton of points. They're a complete fade in DFS. If you have any of their players in a seasonal long league, I'm looking at Hollywood Brown specifically, maybe the tight ends there. If you have an option to pivot, I would probably do it in this particular scenario. If he's going to be under duress, you're probably going to see some dump-offs to the running backs. You're going to see a lot of action to the underneath stuff, Rondale Moore and the tight ends. I just don't think they're going to be going anywhere on offense. But the targets and whatnot are probably going to be kept underneath and really those low ADOT versions of the offense. All right, Cleveland, number 23 in offensive pass protection, Arizona 15th. That does tell us that Cleveland might take a few sacks here, but again, they've been playing kind of banged up at the quarterback spot. That might not necessarily be on the offensive line, but they are taking a little bit more sacks than you'd hope to if you're a Cleveland fan. Getting into the pass DVOA, Cleveland's been really bad, number 31. Fortunately for them, Arizona 29. So they might find this pass game actually a little bit more effective than they're used to. That's kind of an even matchup, studs eat scenario. Cleveland, we've really seen only Amari Cooper be effective on a consistent basis. With this pass rush the way it is, maybe that's an Njoku game as well. Elijah Moore just doesn't seem to be getting a ton of action there, but I don't think Cleveland's necessarily going to have to throw the ball a ton with the way that their defense is playing. And fortunately for them, the run game looks very good. So Cleveland 21, Arizona 31st in stopping the run. That's a 10-point favorite for Cleveland. They're going to find the run game a little bit more effective than they're used to. Run game DVOA 17, Arizona still at 31 for the run DVOA. I think that's how Cleveland's going to move the ball. Stefanski there, that was kind of his bread and butter when he got there. I think this is a big run game for Cleveland. I think they're going to be very successful grinding out those long drives and being super effective there. They are number 3 in offensive neutral situation pace of play, but they're 31st when they have a lead. Just keep that in mind. They're kind of quick until they get a lead, and then they sit on that. I think they're going to be leading in this. They're going to be leaning on that run game. And really, they got a 3-headed monster almost in Cleveland. So who's going to be doing the best? It looks like Kareem Hunt just kind of has his role, and then the other two alternate in terms of the running back room. So Pierre Strong might be in play. Jerome Ford, if he's in there, should be good in this one as well. I think we see touchdowns probably from Cleveland are going to come on the ground in this particular matchup. And I think a lot of the fantasy points are going to come from the run game from Cleveland here. So certainly worth some DFS dart throws on one of those three Cleveland running backs this week. All right, let's get into that other game, number 7 on the slate. LA and Green Bay. Green Bay 3-point home favorites somehow. I think that's because Stafford probably not going to play in this, which is why Green Bay is favored at the moment. They just got the standard 3-point bump for being the home team. That's a 20.75 team implied total for Green Bay, 17.75 for the Rams. Number 9 on the slate for Green Bay as a team total, 16th for the Rams. Getting into the Rams, they are number 17 in offensive pass protection. Green Bay 19th in the pass rush. Pretty even there. Don't expect anything different with the sack rates. Pass DVOA for Los Angeles 15. Green Bay number 27. That is suggestive that Los Angeles should be able to throw the ball pretty effectively. Whether or not they have Stafford remains to be seen. Could have a scrub going in there, and then that pass DVOA not as effective as you'd expect. But fortunately for whoever is quarterbacking Los Angeles, Green Bay's pass DVOA has been pretty bad this week or this season. Getting into the run blocking side, that's really good for the Rams. If they got a backup quarterback, that's probably going to be what they lean on very extensively. So number 8 in offensive run blocking for the Rams, 24th in run stopping for Green Bay. Rams number 6 in run DVOA, Green Bay 24th again in defensive run DVOA. So that tells me Darrell Henderson's probably going to have a really good week. Royce Freeman probably going to be very solid running the ball as well. We'll see how that kind of shakes out. If it's a split backfield, then they might not be as useful, but we could see another one of those Darrell Henderson weeks where he goes off and getting all the volume. And if that's the case, he's going to be very successful this week from the looks of it. So if he's on a start-sit decision, I would kind of lean him. If you need a super deep dart throw in one of your leagues and Royce Freeman's there, I don't think he's necessarily a bad option either. Getting into the Green Bay side, 13th in offensive pass protection, Rams 22nd. Green Bay 14th in pass DVOA, Rams 22nd in pass DVOA. So that's in the favor of Green Bay. They should find themselves with a decent amount of time to throw, and they should be somewhat effective moving the ball via the air. I don't hate this for the Green Bay pass catchers. We haven't seen anything really pop off. Jaden Reed's usually the cheapest option out of all of the pass catching weapons there in Green Bay. I think he's worth a dart throw if you're looking maybe not in DFS. I'm not sure if I'd want that. Christian Watson, maybe. He's a little bit more explosive, and if Green Bay is going to be pretty solid in that department this week, he could have a solid week this week. Getting into the run blocking, Green Bay's number 22nd, the Rams 19th. Pretty even there, and also pretty even in the run DVOA. Green Bay 28th, Los Angeles Rams 26th. Again, with this being even, I think Green Bay is going to find their run game a little bit easier than they're used to. The pass game looks like it's positive. Don't be shocked if you see Green Bay be fairly successful on offense in this particular matchup. Problem is, Los Angeles is probably going to be eating a lot of the clock, with their run game being the better of the two options, and actually the pass game not being too terrible of a matchup there. Considering this is a 38.5 Vegas game total, the quarterbacks in this game situation not very good. Otherwise, I would normally say, hey, I'm looking at the over on this. Both of these offenses look like they're kind of in neutral to positive situations, both in the pass and in the run game. So Green Bay kind of a positive in the pass, Los Angeles a heavy positive in the run game, and not too shabby in the pass game either. Green Bay kind of a neutral aspect in the run game, but probably going to be a lot more successful than they're used to because the Rams aren't as good. Normally, that leads to a few more fantasy points than what Vegas is predicting, but poor quarterback play can certainly ruin that. you do have options on these teams as dart throws in DFS. I guess that's an end of it all. All right, let's get into the worst games on the main slate. We have Minnesota heading into Atlanta. This is a dome game. We do have some new quarterbacks starting here for Atlanta and Minnesota. So Minnesota heading into Atlanta. Atlanta 3.5-point Vegas favorites there. That gives, with the 37.5-point Vegas game total, tied for worst on the slate, number 9 there. That gives Atlanta a 20.5 team implied total, 11th best on the slate. Minnesota 17 team implied total, 18th best on the slate. Getting into the Minnesota side, again, these are with Kirk Cousins. They're number 12 in offensive pass protection, so a little bit above average in terms of taking sacks. Atlanta 31st in defensive pass rush, not generating a lot of sacks. We've seen them be pretty good. We've seen them be in pretty good situations where they should get after the quarterback, and it just doesn't happen. So Atlanta's defense is probably going to be a pretty popular play just because they've been so poor. They're probably cheaper, and they're going against a rookie quarterback here. I just don't know if they're going to be super successful in getting after the quarterback and generating these sacks. This is certainly indicative that that's not going to happen, but again, sack rate with Kirk Cousins there. Offensive pass DVOA number 12, Atlanta 28th. This is indicative that whoever's in there for Minnesota could be pretty good at passing the ball, or at least have some success because Atlanta's defense is so poor. I would probably expect that to continue. I think Jaren Hall or whoever is going to be in there for Minnesota should be fine. It could be Josh Dobbs. They did trade for him, but I really think it's going to be Jaren Hall, and then they just needed somebody as a backup. So they got Dobbs in there to maybe take over next week or a following week after that if Jaren Hall doesn't look like he's ready for the NFL. But in terms of opportunities for a rookie quarterback to go into, Atlanta's defense seems like one of the better ones that you could have as a rookie. Run blocking, Minnesota 13th, Atlanta 15th at stopping the run. Nothing to write home about there. Minnesota 25th in run DVOA, so they've been pretty poor, while Atlanta's at number 11. I don't expect Minnesota to be able to run the ball very well. If they do move the ball, it's going to be via the air, so keep that in mind. A lot of times when this happens, too, you have Jaren Hall coming in. He's been working with people in practice since he's been there that aren't necessarily starting on the roster. So some of these backups from Minnesota, especially Powell, he kind of came out of nowhere. He's probably been getting a lot of work with Jaren Hall. I could see him being a little bit more successful. So in those situations like DraftKings where you're not necessarily as needing of a touchdown, I think somebody like Powell could be an interesting play. Wouldn't be shocked to see him with 5 or 6 catches in this particular matchup, and we've seen him be kind of used in the run game, kind of a gadget player. And if he's got a quarterback in there that's got eyes for him, would not be shocked to see that. And if he's going to be a super cheap option on DraftKings, worth a dart throw. On the Atlanta side, 26th in offensive pass protection. Minnesota's 7th in the pass rush. This is good for Minnesota's defense. They should be generating some sacks here. They do have Taylor Heineke in there for Atlanta. That could change some things, but we've seen him have his fair share of struggles in the past as well as some success, so keep that in mind. Atlanta 25th in pass DVOA, Minnesota 12th. Again, Atlanta's pass game shouldn't be good here. Drake London's already been ruled out. That leaves Kyle Pitts and, Kadero Hodge and Van Jefferson for Atlanta. I don't know. It's going to be bad. It's probably going to be more Bijan Robinson led, especially with the pass game not looking really great here. They're going to probably have to lean on that run game. The run game is more in a neutral to slightly below average situation. So Atlanta 18th in run blocking, Minnesota 12th in run stopping. They're also 12th in defensive run DVOA, while Atlanta is 15th in the run DVOA. Really, I think that's going to be how Atlanta has to move the ball, is on the ground. Through Bijan Robinson, through Tyler Algier. I don't think they're going to be super successful passing the ball. They don't really have any pass-catching weapons there outside of Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. Maybe that they rely very heavily there on those two in the pass game, but it's not looking great for Atlanta. Minnesota's offense, the run doesn't look very good, but the pass game does look a little bit better. I think this is going to be a little bit closer than you'd expect, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the purge siren. I think Minnesota can go into Atlanta, even with a rookie quarterback, and upset the Falcons here. Atlanta's run game is the only thing that's going to be their saving grace. It looks like this pass game is not going to be very effective, and we have Drake London out. So it's really going to condense Atlanta's offense essentially to Pitts and Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. So it just doesn't look like it's going to be a very good pass game for Atlanta. They're going to have to rely on that run game, and that's kind of a below average to neutral situation for them. Fortunately for them, they do have Bijan, who could eat them up on offense. Whether or not he actually gets some run, that remains to be seen. Arthur Smith, right? All right, let's get into the last one. New York Giants going into Vegas. This is tied for the worst on the slate again at number 9, 37.5 Vegas game total. We do have Vegas as 2-point home favorites, giving them a 19.75 team implied total. That's 12th best on the slate. Giants at 17.75, 16th best team implied total. Giants 32 in offensive pass protection and 32 in pass DVOA. Not very good. Fortunately for them, Vegas 25th in pass rush and 20th in pass DVOA. Perhaps New York finds it a little bit easier to pass the ball, but they really, I don't even know. I don't want to spit out any names from the Giants in terms of pass game options. I think they're all a fade. Just don't do it. Looking at the run blocking, that's probably Giants' bread and butter this week. 31st in run blocking, 32nd in run DVOA. Absolutely atrocious, but Vegas 30th and 29th in the defensive categories there. 30th in run stopping, 29th in the run DVOA. That's how Giants are going to move the ball. It's going to be a Barkley week for the Giants. I think he's going to be involved in the pass game as well. He's just going to, I think he had like 40-something opportunities last week, something crazy like that. I think they're going to lean on him again this week, and that's going to be the case. They do get Daniel Jones back from the sounds of it, but I think it's going to be the Barkley show for the Giants this week. And he's certainly in play for cash games. I don't know what his ceiling is in this game. If he's super expensive, I might not want that for a tournament play, but I think he's going to be pretty successful this week. Raiders, in terms of offense, 22nd in offensive pass protection, 29th in the defensive pass rush for the Giants. Nothing major there. Don't expect a ton of sacks, but we did see Aiden O'Connell take a bunch of sacks when he started last time. Pass DVOA for the Giants, number 16, so they're middle of the pack. Vegas 30th in the pass DVOA. Again, with Aiden O'Connell in there, that could change. We've just seen Vegas struggle in general moving the ball via the air. This doesn't necessarily look any different with the Giants middle of the pack and Vegas one of the worst. I would expect that to continue for Vegas's pass game. Who do you want to attack there? I mean, they have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. Those are the only two options I would really say. Again, with the rookie quarterback, we could see him targeting more of the players that he has been practicing with. That's probably Hunter Renfrow and some of these backup options from Vegas. We've seen this recently with some of these newer quarterbacks coming in, just targeting the people that they play with a little bit more in practice. Fortunately for Vegas, it looks like the run game, it's going to be similar for them as well as the Giants. 25th in run blocking, 27th in run DVOA, which was really bad, but Giants 27th and 27th in both run stopping categories. So they're going to find it a little bit easier to run the ball on the Giants compared to what they're used to. I think that's going to be how they move the ball. It's going to be Josh Jacobs and Barkley as the only options you're probably going to want from this particular matchup. I don't see them necessarily scoring a bunch of games, a bunch of touchdowns or a bunch of points in this game. But the run game is going to be how they grind it out. It's probably going to be a game that goes really quick and doesn't score a lot of points. All right, that's going to do it for the main slate. Let's get into the island games, and then we'll get you out of here. Sorry, we're getting into the bye weeks. Scroll a little too far. All right, Buffalo going into Cincinnati. This is a Sunday night football game. Possible AFC championship matchup here. Buffalo going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati 2-point home favorites. This is a 50.5 Vegas game total. We're looking at an island game. Cincinnati 26.25 team implied total. Buffalo 24.25 team implied total. Buffalo's offense on pass protection, number 3. Cincinnati, number 11. Buffalo pass DVOA, number 2. Cincinnati, number 11. This is in the favor of Buffalo. They should have a decent amount of time to throw. Not amazing, but a decent amount of time to throw, and they should be pretty effective moving the ball via the air. I'd expect that to continue with Stephon Diggs. We've seen in scenarios where it's been a lot of time to throw, where Gabe Davis gets involved. I don't necessarily think this is going to be a game where he goes off, but they should have a decent amount of time to throw. I think this is just going to be more of a Stephon Diggs type game, with it being a good but not phenomenal pass protection matchup. Run blocking for Buffalo, number 3. Cincinnati in the red at 26. Buffalo run DVOA, number 10. Cincinnati 25th in stopping the run. This looks like Buffalo is just going to absolutely obliterate Cincinnati on offense here. They should be moving the ball very effectively. I don't hate James Cook in this particular matchup. I don't think he's going to be super popular on this slate either. With Buffalo moving the ball so well, though, do you want some of those guys that can score touchdowns, especially in an island matchup where one touchdown sways a lot? Sure. I think you can play like a Latavius Murray there for Buffalo. We do have Leonard Fournette coming into town. I'm not sure what he's going to be price-wise, but we could see him plunge into the end zone, just like in a red zone package type situation. And I think he's going to be very low rostered. So if you're looking to win a tournament, he's certainly somebody that you can look into. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of run. Again, if there's going to be a lot of fantasy points scored, that's probably not the greatest option unless he's plunging into the end zone twice. But keep that in mind. It looks like all Buffalo players should be pretty good. Josh Allen, Steph Diggs in the pass game are my biggest options. Kincaid should certainly be well here as well. And then James Cook should be pretty effective when he gets the ball in his hands on the ground. Who's going to be scoring the touchdowns when they get close to the end zone? Because I expect that to happen a lot for Buffalo. Could be Latavius Murray, could be Leonard Fournette, could be James Cook, could be Josh Allen. Just keep that in mind. It's a lot of options there for Buffalo, a lot of points looking to be scored on their end and from Vegas as well. Cincinnati, getting into theirs, they're number 7 in offensive pass protection, Buffalo number 4. So sack game, Cincinnati might actually take a few more sacks than they're used to, or be a little bit more uncomfortable in the pocket than they're used to. In the past DVOA, Cincinnati 20th, Buffalo number 13. That's slightly in the favor of Buffalo's defense as well. I'd expect Cincinnati, really almost a studs eat scenario. Jamar Chase, I think, should be fine in this, but they're going to be, I don't want to say struggling. It's just going to be a grind. Similar to that Philadelphia game, similar to the Philly-Dallas game, I think it's just going to be a grind for Cincinnati's pass game in this particular matchup. Getting into the run blocking, Cincinnati number 15 in run blocking, Buffalo number 8, slightly in the favor of Buffalo's defense there. Cincinnati number 18 in offensive run DVOA, Buffalo number 17 in defensive run DVOA. So pretty even there in the DVOAs. Studs eat, Mixon. Man, he's got talent. He's been pretty inefficient his entire career, and now that he's older, that's just being further exacerbated. But they should be fine in the run game. Pass game is going to be a little bit of a struggle. With that being said, like Mixon's probably off my board unless you think he's going to score a touchdown or two in this scenario, which is certainly possible. But I think Cincinnati's pass game is their bread and butter. We haven't seen the run game be super great there. I think that's going to be where more of the fantasy points come from Cincinnati. I also think Buffalo is going to be scoring a lot of points in this, and Cincinnati is going to have to play catch up and kind of operate through the pass game in this particular matchup. This being said, Buffalo's offense looks like it's going to be humming. Cincinnati looks like it's going to be more of a below average type of matchup for them. I'm just going to go ahead and give the Purge siren. I think Buffalo wins this game. They're going to go into Cincinnati. I think they're going to be pretty effective moving the ball. And I think Cincinnati's really going to have to struggle and really grind it out to get to their point total. I think they can do it. I just think Buffalo is going to be in the 30s. I think Cincinnati is going to be stuck in the 20s. for this particular matchup. I say this hits the over, just based off of Buffalo doing a lot of the heavy lifting and Cincinnati being competent and having to grind out for their points. So wouldn't be shocked to see like a 30-24 type of deal here in the favor of Buffalo. Interesting matchup. A lot of points should be scored. Fun stuff. So on those scenarios, those touchdowns, if you didn't have that guy in your lineup, you can still make it up throughout the game. All right, let's get into Monday Night Football. Last one. Chargers going into New York to face the Jets. The Jets, the home team, they're 3.5-point home underdogs, actually. So Chargers favored here. It's a 40 Vegas game total, pretty low. That gives Chargers a 21.75 team implied total. The Jets at 18.25. Getting into the Chargers side of things, they are number 9 in offensive pass protection, number 6 in pass DVOA. Jets, number 16th in defensive pass rush, so middle of the pack, a little bit in the favor of Chargers, maybe not taking as many sacks as they're used to, or not taking as many sacks in this game, which is good. But Jets, number 6 in pass DVOA, so that's matched up with Chargers there. Chargers, studs eat type of scenario. I think it's going to be a Keenan Allen week for what it's worth on the Chargers side. In the pass game, I think it's just going to be him. We did have Josh Palmer, not really going to be sounding like trending towards not playing. He's questionable, but it hasn't been practicing yet this week. So it's going to be Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen, really, and probably Gerald Everett getting a lot of the action there in the pass game with it being so condensed down. But if Palmer plays by Monday, could be a little bit different story there. It just sounds like he hasn't practiced yet this week. Saturday, probably not going to practice. I just don't plan on him having a big game in this. It's an island matchup. It's going to be a Keenan Allen week. Put that in your books. Run blocking, Chargers really bad, 29. Jets really good at number 5. Expect a lot of behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, stuffed runs from the Chargers here. And run DVOA, Chargers 22nd, Jets 18th. That's a little bit more even, but also still in the favor of the Jets defense. Based off of this, I think Chargers going to have to move the ball on offense via the air game. We do see Eckler get involved as well into that. And typically when these wide receivers go out, we do see Eckler with a bump in receptions. He's certainly in play for this island game DFS. Getting into the Jets side, they're 27th across the board in their pass protection categories. Chargers number 8 in defensive pass rush, number 26 in the pass DVOA. So Chargers should be able to generate some sacks here against the Jets. That's what this is telling us. But it's also telling us Jets might be a little bit more effective at passing the ball than they're used to. That's kind of good for Garrett Wilson. They don't really have any other pass catching options there. That you're going to be interested in an island game for the Jets. The run stopping for the Chargers, number 23, Jets, number 28 in offensive run blocking. And then they're 24th in the run DVOA, while the Chargers 20th. Really, this is indicative. Chargers going to be getting after the quarterback. Garrett Wilson probably going to be effective. The run game looks to be slightly below average there, but Breece Hall is really good. I can see him being another option there for the Jets, and those really are the only two from the Jets that I'd be interested in getting. With the Vegas game total being so low, these options from the Jets not being super good, the Chargers not looking like a great matchup there outside of Keenan Allen. I'm interested in kickers in this. I'm interested in defensive plays in this, and Chargers defense, Jets defense, certainly. Doubling them up, it could be one of those type of island game matchups this week. Getting in Keenan Allen, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall with the two defenses and maybe a kicker or something like that might be the winning route combo that you need to go this week for this particular Monday Night Football game. It looks to be pretty poor. Chargers do play fast, so getting a few more receptions there. Quentin Johnston and Eckler and tight end Everett could be in line for a few extra targets and a few extra receptions with them playing a little bit quicker. Anyway, that's going to be an interesting one. I think it's going to be low scoring affair. There are certainly some stud options that you can get, and you're probably going to want a defense or maybe two in your lineups for this Monday Night Football game. All right, that's going to do it for today. Glad the rescue dog here cooperated. We got in a pretty solid session here. We'll have to edit out some things, but we'll get it done. Hopefully you learned a little bit about the games this week and the interesting slate. A lot of low totals. You're probably just going to want some one-off plays from a very select few of these games, and then really attack those like Indy, Carolina, Dallas, Philly games this week, and maybe like Baltimore as, you know, Lamar Jackson type of a thing. It's going to be an interesting week, and I don't think there's going to be a ton of points scored from the looks of it. Vegas is already predicting a lot of low scores. This adjusted line play is suggesting that some of these offenses are, you know, just in neutral or below average or just crummy situations, and you're really going to want to attack those teams that are projected to be good and those game totals that are going to be good, and really not altering outside of that too much for your stuff. I can see this slate being really condensed in terms of some of your roster percentages and some of these scores, specifically between, you know, maybe the 75th percentile and the 25th percentile is going to be really close. So don't be shocked to see that if you're putting in multiple lineups into some of these tournaments. All right. That's going to do it for the Adjusted Line Play Report for Week 9. Really appreciate the views. Really appreciate all the new subscribers coming in. Have a good one, folks. Let me know if you win any money, because that's what it's all about. We're here to win some money together. Bye.